Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Julie Ennis. I am the CEO of our corporate services business for the UK and Ireland. And with me here is Cunera Vlaar, the CEO of our energy and resources business for Europe. As members of SoTogether, Sodexo's Global Gender Advisory Board, we are delighted to be your hosts for today's event. We would like to thank you for taking the time for joining us to discuss this very important topic, looking at how we can co-create the future workplace while embedding gender equality. We all know that the pandemic has disproportionately affected women, contributing to increased gender inequalities in health, well-being, in development, and in work. And we are seeing significant changes in the workplace and facing totally new expectations from an employer perspective following the pandemic. Our discussion today will focus on how this new working environment provides us all with the opportunity to accelerate positive change towards a more sustainable and inclusive future for all. So joining us today, we have Sunil Nayak, Annick Devancey and Peter Mellon from Sodexo, Sandra Sancier-Soutan from McKinsey, Vanessa Otak from Unilever, Raj Verma from Sanofi, and Funmi Akinoso, a student representative from the Robert Gordon University in Aberdeen in the UK. So we have a fantastic agenda lined up. We're going to start with some opening words from Sunil. Sandra will then share some insights on why gender and inclusion matter more than ever. Then Annick will lead the panel discussion with Vanessa, Raj, Funmi and Peter, and we will end with closing comments from Cunera. Please note that today's webinar will be recorded and shared with you afterwards, and we encourage us to have an interactive session, so please post your comments in the chat, and also during the panel you will have the opportunity to ask questions to our panelists. So to begin, safety is always our first priority at Sodexo, and we believe that one of the best ways to embed and create a culture of safety is by sharing information and educating everybody. So today, I'm pleased to share a brief safety moment with you on gender-based violence. So first, let me begin by defining what gender-based violence is. It is a harmful act, be that physical, sexual, or emotional, perpetrated against a person's will that is based on socially recognized gender differences between males and females. It can affect anyone, regardless of income, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation or religion. And while it affects both males and females, the majority of victims are women and girls. And unfortunately, there is a high probability that you may be working or studying alongside someone who is or has experienced some type of violence, even within your own family. And the numbers are quite alarming. It affects 1 in 3 women in their lifetime. And we know that less than 40% of the women who experience gender-based violence seek help of any sort, and only 10% seek help by appealing to the police or health services. Amongst many negative impacts, gender-based violence weakens an employee's or student's physical and mental health and well-being, decreases their motivation and concentration, leading to increased chances of mistakes and accidents, results in increased absenteeism, and it also seriously jeopardizes women's opportunities for advancement and career progression. So what can we all do as organizations? Well, everyone on this call today can take a stand against gender-based violence. At Sodexo, we have produced guidelines to support our teams, countries, and regions on the topic so that we ensure we put the relevant actions in place. However, the minimum standard for all is to at least have a helpline number available and visible for women who are seeking help. And we recommend that all organizations put this in place. Raising awareness is the first step to enable changing behaviours, and it's key to spreading a clear message of zero tolerance for all forms of violence against women. So we can make a huge impact together. So I am now going to hand the floor and welcome Sunil, President of Europe for Sodexo and our executive co-sponsor for SoTogether. So Sunil, over to you.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you for sharing this very important safety moment. So I'm actually really happy and honored to represent the Sodexo Global Gender Advisory Board, which is called SoTogether. SoTogether was started in 2009, and I am the executive sponsor of SoTogether, and its members include male and female leaders across the world. And our real objective is to steer the strategy and the roadmap for DE&I for Sodexo. And we do that working with our clients, working with our teams, and working with different stakeholders all across the world. So this really meeting is for that, is to work with our diverse panelists and to work with all of you, as Julie said, to co-create the future of work, really keeping DEI in mind. So I just want to share a little bit about what Sodexo does in DEI and why we do it. Sodexo was started 55 years back, and it always had a twofold mission. One is to improve the quality of life of our employees and of the people we serve, but also to contribute to the economic, social, and the environmental areas in the countries that we work in. So this is now reflected in our new purpose to create a better everyday for everyone, to create a better life for all. That's the new purpose that we have now shared in the organization. So Sodexo, works across 40,000 with 400,000 people across 40,000 sites. And for us, if we really want to be an inclusive company, if we really want to be able to deliver best to our clients and customers, and if we want to be able to attract and retain talent, diversity and inclusion is really, really important to us. And it has always been deep-rooted in what we do. And we made a lot of progress. So for example, we've always set our targets to have women in leadership positions at a senior leadership. And today we have nearly 39% of our women at senior leadership position. We've also set strong targets to have women in operations. And we set our target that by 2025, we want to have 30% of women in operation. But we also want to build a very inclusive culture. And to do that, we want to live our employee value proposition, which is very important for us. And to do that, we have done a lot of stuff. For example, now we have started to roll out our progressive benefits. Our progressive benefits are supporting family care and are also supporting parental leave. And this will support us to be much more inclusive in our business. But we're also working around reducing the anomalies around our gender pay gap to be more and more inclusive as an organization. And finally, we are working with our communities. We're working with our communities through our She Works program, working with women, supporting our communities and our business leaders and women in the different communities. So as we say in Sodexo, being part of Sodexo is more than a job. It is part of being something that is always greater. That's very, very important for us. But we know this is just not enough. We need to do more. And we know that the future of work is changing. It's changing dramatically. We don't know what the future of work is going to be. Everybody is working on it. And that's the reason why we're really happy to have the panelists and all of you to have this really, really important discussion on the future of work. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion and to the contribution from all of you to help us co-create the future of work. So thank you again to the panelists and thank you to all of you for joining this webinar. So let me hand it over to Julie now.
Thank you, Sunil, and it's very true. I think we all play a key role and are all accountable for this. So let's now move on to our keynote. So I'd like to welcome Sandra Sancier-Sultan, Senior Partner at McKinsey & Company. Sandra, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you all. I'm very happy to be with you today. Listen, I will try to share some of the insights that we've gathered over the last 15 years. We at McKinsey have been very involved into creating the fact base for diversity and inclusion to become more and more present as a business topic in the workplace. And I should also share and say that we owe a lot to the collaboration with Sodexo. I remember, Sunil, you were mentioning that you built SoTogether in 2009. If I'm not mistaken, back in 2006, when we launched the first ever benchmark on gender diversity, on practices, you at Sodexo were among the very first to join forces and collaborate. So very happy to be with you today. Listen, given the topic, the critical topic that you're going to discuss today, just wanted to share a bit of context on what is the workplace today. And of course, the workplace is defined by the people in the organization. And I think it's important to ground us into the fact that today, despite the economic uncertainty, we still have a lot of attrition potential. And so this great attrition that many people talked about after COVID does persist. When you ask workers all around the world, you have numbers like 40% saying that they may leave in the next 3 to 6 months, and up to 74% saying that they could leave easily, okay? What's even more interesting is that the ones who left are reassessing, and most of them went to non-traditional jobs. What we call non-traditional jobs are, you're not working only for one company, or you're working in a very different role as the one you had before. This reality, as you can see in the next slide, is not, is actually true for many different industries. And the numbers might differ, but the big direction is that over a third of the employees today in the workplace actually think about leaving. You can imagine how much of an issue / a potential it is if we are to change that situation. So now turning to why we are in such a place. What's the underlying reasons for this great attrition? You'll see that it's very interesting, because what you see is that the reason on the next slide, you see that the reason why women in particular leave or think about leaving the workplace, it is linked to 3 different factors. One, they want to advance, but they face stronger headwinds than men. Second, the issue of the double work of home and the office still holds true. They are overworked at work and at home, and under-recognized, so on both sides. And then women are looking for, even more than the Gen Z, they are looking for a different culture at work. And so this issue of having people in the workplace who think about leaving if change does not happen is even stronger for women, but it is also stronger, as you can see in the next slide, for the younger generations. And that, I think, makes the event you're having today, truly perfect to problem solve on what are the solutions. Because as you can see here, you see that the younger generations are seeing are much more at risk than the younger ones, than the older ones. What you have here is the facts of how do women under 30 versus the totality of women leaders think about the reasons to leave. And they see the lack of opportunity to advance nearly twice as strong a factor to leave for the younger generation than the older one. So you're working on an important topic, and the fact that you brought together different stakeholders, including students, is just absolutely right on target. We need all generation to problem solve on this issue. So that is the context. Now, if we step back, why did I start by saying that this topic you are going to discuss today is more important than ever? What you will see on the next slide is that the diversity and inclusion, diversity is more than ever an absolute critical factor of a company's performance. I am so happy about these numbers. What this shows is that over time, from 2014 to 2019, we've done analysis on worldwide corporations. We looked at the performance of these companies for the ones who have more women, so the top quartile versus the rest. And we even made the difference of the overperformance these companies have compared to the sector to make sure we were unbiasing the sample. Each time we did that, there was an overperformance of 15% or more for women in the first, for companies in the first quartile when it comes to gender diversity. And guess what? This difference in overperformance is increasing with time. So the more we do that study, the more the gap increases. And on the next slide, there's something that is also very dear to my heart. And it shows that this is not only true for gender diversity, it is also true for ethnic diversity. So the second number, 35, 33, 36, is the overperformance when we look at the companies who are on the first quartile in terms of ethnic diversity. Of course, this is not the same sample. Many of you know we can't measure that in all countries, but still it is a significant one and it goes into the same direction. One could say this is obvious. If you operate in a diverse team, you're much better at your decision making, you're much better at representing your customers. You at Sodexo know that well. So the case is still strong, stronger than ever, in a moment where economic uncertainty, I believe, should push all leaders to push hard on all performance levels, and diversity and inclusion is definitely one. So now if we move to, that's all nice, but what is the situation today in corporations around the world? A much less rosy situation, as you will see on the next slide. Basically, what this slide says is, one, that the participation of women in the workplace is still much lower than men. Second, that then the ability for women to get to the highest level of leadership in companies is still far below their participation in the workplace. So there's still huge potential. We have worked on it. It's trillions of value brought to the economy if we could get more women to work, and then more productivity of these women, more women in leadership. Okay. Next slide, I wanted to turn to the reasons for that. The reasons for that is that we still have this broken rung where women might enter the workplace. In many industries like yours, there's actually more women at the entry level than men. But then the first level of management is a big deal. And by the way, the others are as well. Huh? But so this thing about the broken rung, the ability to promote, is still there. And frankly, we don't see a lot of progress when we look at time series. This is true for women. This is even more true if you add over intersectionality. So if you take Black women, for example. Then on the next slide, I wanted to turn the topic from gender diversity to inclusion. And why? One, because gender diversity measures the diversity in the workplace, and actually, even if the situation is not where it should be, which is 50-50, there are more and more positive mentions in many corporations around the diversity topic. So both managers and employees see that the majority of companies are taking action towards diversity. This is far less the case when it comes to inclusion. Comments on whether the company is inclusive are much less positive. They are negative. And this is critical because in all our studies, we see that women either leave the workplace or don't progress, mostly because of the culture of inclusion that surrounds them. And so what do we mean by diversity and inclusion? Diversity, on the next page, you see it, it's very clear. It's how many diverse profile women and others you have at the different stages of your pipeline, recruiting, retention, advancement. Inclusion is a much more, it's a newer dimension, but the way we describe it, the way we define it is the ability for an organization to create a sense of belonging, to create an environment of openness, and to create an environment of equality. And on this absolutely critical inclusive environment, we see today huge gaps and real areas for progress. On the next page, I just wanted to show you why there's so much negative sentiment on inclusiveness. This is just a snapshot or a zoom on microaggression and what is the reality on a daily basis of women in the workplace. You take women in the workplace, you see that for 28% of them, they say that they are asked to provide evidence of their competence. Nearly 40% of them are getting their judgment questioned. And this is frequent, so this is things happening every day. Over 50% of them are interrupted or spoken over. And it goes on and on and on. These microaggressions, we believe because they are daily ones and that they are so frequent, they have an absolutely major impact on the confidence of women in the workplace, on the way they are perceived by their environment, and at the end of the day, that determines their ability to become leader. This funnel shows you as well that the more you add, if you're an Asian woman or a Black woman, this gets even worse. And we believe that developing an inclusive culture is the only way to address these biases and the only way to make the workplace an environment where women and other diversity populations will thrive and develop their full potential. So finishing just on the way we think about the actions, and I really, I'm sure that the panelists have a much more concrete and rich way of tackling this point, but wanted to share on the next page the fact that we, over the years and over many benchmarks, we now have, over 12 millions of respondents and many companies. We have developed the conviction that diversity needs to be run like a business topic. And so there needs to be targets on representation, especially in leadership. We need to have stronger accountability as with any other business levels. And we believe that it is critical to take bold steps on the inclusion dimension. And that means working on the openness, on the biases, tackling discrimination, and then foster belonging for all kinds of population. Thank you for your time, and turning over to you now, Julie.
Thank you, Sandra. I think so insightful and thought-provoking. So I'm looking forward to the panel. So I would now like to pass the floor to Anik, our Chief HR Officer at Sodexo and Executive Co-Sponsor for SoTogether, who's going to lead our panel discussion. Anik.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Sandra, for all these insights that clearly show why, as leaders, we must continue to drive gender equality, but not only gender equality, as you stated, but inclusion and the culture of a company is super important. And even more now, as we enter a new phase in the workplace with changing employee expectations and a shortage of talent, we should ask, can we, in this new working environment, accelerate positive changes towards gender equality? The desire to move forward and navigate to the new chapter is very strong, and we will still see that with our panel today. We are going to spend the next 60 minutes on exchanging ideas, how forward-looking organizations are designing future workplaces, and also how, by addressing gender inequities and embedding gender equality in our workplace practices, we are building mutually beneficial environment for all, impacting both people and business. Moreover, we will also hear that what are the aspirations and expectations of the young generation regarding their future employers. Let's open the discussion with our distinguished panel today. So we have Vanessa Oteik, Global Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Leader at Unilever, Raj Verma, the Chief Diversity and Culture Officer at Sanofi, and Funmi Akinozo, Student President, Education and Welfare at Robert Gordon University, Aberdeen, and Peter Melin, Country President and CEO, Corporate Services Sweden, Sodexo. To all of you, thank you to be there with us today. But let's start looking at the broader context. Vanessa, this is the first question, comes to you. Why the pandemic created disruption as regards gender equality? Vanessa, do you think the new working environment is accelerating positive change? And if yes, can you give us any examples?
Oh, thanks so much. First of all, such a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Such an honor to be part of this panel. So yes, while the pandemic forced us to think differently about the working environment, and despite of all the challenge and the negative impact that it had some areas, as we spoke before, like in gender equality, one of the positive changes that I believe that came from it is this acceleration in more flexible working models. It forced business to adapt and to adapt quickly to how to work differently. And why it's a positive change for gender equality? Because women for a long time have been asking for more flexibility and how working differently, because we know that unfortunately, women are still disproportionately impacted by childcare, elderly care, house chores, and out-of-work responsibilities. So these working models, flexible working models, they end up helping women to be able to balance the work life and the outside of work life that they have. Even though before the pandemic, several businesses already offered some kind of flexibility in their ways of working, such as different working hours, patterns, or locations, the pandemic accelerated the change in policies, but most importantly, in mindset. Sandra just now mentioned the importance of inclusion beyond diversity. So we know that mindset is extremely important in all these changes that we are making. Mindset is as important as, or even more important than the policies themselves. So with the pandemic, become much more commonplace, much more acceptable to work from another location or a different hours, and then become it's becoming easier for women to adapt that kind of ways of doing so, ways of working, and leveling we level the playing field. When everybody or the majority of the workforce is doing that, the ones that need it more, they don't have that feeling of being an outlier, are asking for a favor. That helps quite a lot. So I think that that's one of the main things that had a positive impact coming from the pandemic and all the challenge that it provided to us.
Thank you, Sandra. And what about then the company culture? Because, it was already in transition before the pandemic and can now be diffused with new possibilities. So ensuring a positive company culture is more vital than ever, as you said. And at Sanofi, Raj, how are you creating a positive company culture of tomorrow while driving gender equality?
Thank you for the question, and delighted to be with the team. Look, in Sanofi, we were very intentional about building culture through two clear levers: employee experience and diversity, equity and inclusion. And one of the things that we did, we put it under one leadership, because the seriousness of this work has such a big impact, because what lockdown did was present us with some really deep insights into the world of work. So, what we've learned is that people leave or join a company because of three things: culture, inclusion, and the everyday experience. And to instill that, what we made sure when we created our new purpose to chase the miracles of science to improve people's lives, it offered people inspiration to join and a reason to stay. So our approach at Sanofi to winning culture is built around three things: symbols, processes and behaviors, and it's about making sure they stick. So we've got a very clear listening strategy that keeps us relevant and in touch. We use a lot of storytelling from around Sanofi to really, I guess, reflect the reality of what we see. And most importantly, we evolve our culture with our teams, not for them. So we are very much our own culture carriers. And this is the part around inclusion that's so important for us. And finally, I'd say, hybrid and flex work can obviously work, but we do need to be careful about those unintended consequences, and especially for women when it comes to career development. And that's the work that we have to keep doing culturally to make sure that we're totally inclusive of opportunities for all, and not just those who give in-person FaceTime all week. So that's how I sort of wrap up our approach to having a winning culture at Sanofi.
Thank you, Raj. That's very true. And to reach Sodexo's ambition in our bucket, I would say, and be the world leader in sustainable food and valued experiences at every moment in life, leaders and management have an important role to play, also to attract and to retain talents through new leadership roles and behaviors. And Peter, can you share how you, as a business leader, role model, these skills and behaviors while committing to gender equality? How do you operate these?
Thank you very much, Annick, for that question. And you put me on the spot a bit there with that kind of question, because it's all about ourselves or myself as a leader. And I think that it comes back to all of us as leaders. We need to lead by example. It's not what we say, it's actually what we do that matters. And I think that it's very important to both retain talent and attract new talents. And retaining talents, it is for us as leaders, as business leaders, to be very clear on that, make sure that we are actually the one that brings the purpose to life for all our teams. And also, we are also responsible for making the employee experience for all our employees as outstanding as possible, because that's what makes them staying with us. That together with a clear development route for all the individuals as well. We also know that all the young people, they are very, very clear on that corporate values is important. And corporate values is not anything that is just written on a page. It's actually something that we live, breathe, bring with us in everything we do. And yeah, walking the talk as a leader is so important. And that will also gives us the opportunity to attract the people that we would like to have in our business. And as an example, a specific example, I would say that we have done some new things where I come from in Sweden, where we actually have joined the network of young female engineers. And this is a completely new way of attracting a new population to our company. And it has been really, really successful. Also using digital tools, as we are present in a student app that every student in Sweden actually have on their phone right now, when we're actually posting possibilities for master thesis and also job opportunities. And I think that having these new ways of attracting and communicating with a young workforce is so important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. I always say, that an employee value proposition or, the culture of a company, it's about proof points and the real experience that we can put, and we can share with our employee. So let's see, as young generation join the workforce, it is naturally reshaping our workplace culture, as you said, but also winning companies are those understanding their perspectives, managing well their expectations, and also identifying the opportunity to gather their input to co-create inclusive and equitable workforce. And for me, we thank you to be there with us today. There has been a research done in university regarding the expectation of Generation Z on their future workplace, and with a special focus on young female students. Can you share with us what were the main findings of the interviews done for this research?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that question. And I'm so delighted to be here at the panel today. There are three topics that come to my mind when responding to this question. First is the provision of an emotional support for new employees coming into an organization. And the second one is enhancing the recruitment process for these new employees. And the third one is ensuring a flexible work model. One of the things that future talent are expecting for employers when going into the workforce is the support that organizations are able to provide apart from the pay slip that they give to their employers. Based on the study, it was discovered that 76% of females in the workspace expect emotional and well-being support to be provided by their future employers. Across the UK, I have seen how universities are invested in supporting their students, both physically, mentally, and socially. As a result, when graduates are entering into the workforce or into the workplace, they expect that same emotional support being provided by their employers towards their attitude, towards their mental health, towards receiving services which will contribute to their well-being while working. And secondly, from a student perspective, I've also noticed that young talent expect employers to have more equality in their recruitment process. In fact, in the report, it shows that several women in the workspace experience exclusion from from conversation, meeting, and leadership position, just like Julia had mentioned in the presentation. For instance, in the education and engineering sectors, many women report that although they have the same qualification as their male colleague or male co-workers, they were likely to get less career opportunities simply because of their gender. Young talents would like to see companies take clear action on discriminative and biased behavior, focusing on individual ability rather than their gender. Students would also like to see companies raising awareness, campaigns, things like that to see that young generation are being given the career opportunities, and also promoting unbiased role and bringing more females to male dominant field. We can therefore say that students are looking for employers who will actively take action to creating an inclusive workspace and enforcing EDI values in their policies, in their practices, and also living to their commitment by ensuring individual respect and are treated equally in the workspace. Lastly, I think another consideration that should be made by companies and organizations is that they should be made, they should provide hybrid mode of working space for new employees, which has been, we mentioned severally during the COVID-19 period. From the research, we have seen that flexible working expectations were stated repeatedly. For instance, we see that forward-looking companies adopting the 3 to 4 days model, and employers have realized that the effectiveness of their employees have not changed. So from a workplace perspective, we were surprised to see that non-respondents or participants were wanting to work full-time from home due to their mental health and things like that. So in fact, some of them have mentioned that working in the office give them the opportunity to ask questions, relate to their co-workers and things like that. So from the study, we have discovered that 71% of female talents want flexible work hours fits with their job in order to be able to incorporate that with their personal life. So we can see that flexibility is very vital to the workspace. Thank you.
Thank you, Fanny, for sharing these very interesting findings from this study. And let's also see what our audience has responded to the question. We ask you what is the priority while co-creating the future workplace. And on the slide that you see, people indeed is the most critical to put employees and their experience at the head of everything while building a new workplace for all. You have also placed inclusive workplaces as a common priority, with equality and equity being key focuses. And thirdly, we see flexibility, which you talked about just a moment ago, Fami, which has certainly come to stay with a growing importance in work-life balance. So thank you for your answers. And at this point, maybe let's continue with our audience and take a couple of questions. I see in the chat that we have one. So parenthood is widely recognized as having a significant impact on gender equality. What do you believe are the most impactful initiatives to address this without creating further burnout for the women who are still overwhelmingly responsible for childcare? So maybe Raj and Vanessa, you may want to respond on this question.
Oh yeah, no, happy to have a first go. I think one of the opportunities that we saw certainly at Sanofi was about parental leave, and we launched a new parental leave policy that was co-created with our own gender board in 2021, launched in 22, which was to provide 14 weeks full pay from day one. There were no caveats or no asterisks to say, and here's the exceptions. Because one of the things certainly at Sanofi we want to do is to ensure that level of consistency so everybody has that same experience. So if you're going to be a parent, regardless of your family makeup, you can be, right? We want to give you those 14 weeks to spend time bonding with your children. And that's really important. And part of that, it also takes some of the pressure off from those first formative weeks and months of a new family. And I think the other big thing that we've realized is that there's less places for male hiring managers to hide, right? It's easy to say, well, let's hire a man because they're unlikely to take parental leave. Whereas if we hire a woman, it could be a higher chance. Now, a man can take as much leave as a woman does in any country in Sanofi. And that's the important leveling piece. So we talk about inclusion. That's giving everyone the same opportunity and hopefully allows equal access to the policies that we have.
Thank you, Raj. And Vanessa, what about Unilever on this question?
Yeah, thanks, Anik. Yeah, to complement, because Raj beautifully said already the benefits of equal parental leave. I think beyond that, is also working on the following time, after they come back from the parental leave. So the culture, the mindset of that is so important. So that's some of the things that I was mentioning before about flexible working and making it acceptable, having the right mindset. So if you offer as a company, for example, a policy that allows you to work different hours, so you can do like a school run, pick up your kids, for example, everybody should be feeling that they are okay to do that, and that's not going to have a negative impact on their career. And that also includes men. So for me, the future actually the big things that we have to do, the impactful initiatives that we can have, is incentivizing men to also take those roles. That they are okay to also say, hey, these are the hours that I work, because then I have to pick up my kids, because then I have outside of the work responsibilities, and not being penalized for that. It's a massive culture change, that we don't want to be feeding that kind of profile, that we want people to be working endless hours of the day and be all the time available for the company no matter what, that actually want to create this kind of acceptable, that we can work in different patterns and make it okay, for both men and women, for everybody.
Thank you, Vanessa. And of course, with Sodexo, Sunil said that a few minutes ago that we have done the same thing, and we are launching a progressive benefits program in the next week. So you will hear about that soon. There's a second question that is raised by the floor. Should we be encouraging positive discrimination when it comes to promotions, particularly in industries where the percentage of women in the workplace is small, so percentage of women in senior roles is even smaller? Maybe Sandra, it's a question for you.
Listen, on this one, two elements. First, interestingly, when we look at industries, the industries where there are less women at the starting point, by the way, industrial sectors, they actually end up with the same percentage of women at the top position. So, contrary to at least what I would have believed, these industries seem to be doing better at promoting the women they have, okay? I don't know the reason. Some say it's because of the engineer culture. I don't know. Are they doing great? No. Are they doing better than the industries who have 50% of women or more and still, get to this cap of 10 to 15% women in the executive committee? But the fact is they are doing better. Then on the topic of targets and quotas, I was on a panel at the Women's Forum something like 10 years or more ago. And because I was younger, I was advocating against quotas. And your CEO at the time, the Sodexo CEO, came to me after and told me, dear Mrs. Sandra, you are not making sense. On one end, you're saying that diversity is a business topic and a clear lever for performance. On the other end, you don't feel at ease saying that, as in any business topic, we should set targets. So now I'm a transformed woman. I do believe that, like in any other business topic, there should be targets. If you don't achieve your growth target or your profitability target or your diversity target, you need to have an explanation and a real discussion with your boss. Should be the same with diversity.
Thank you, Sandra. And it's true that at that time, our CEO was a champion in these questions, but we are still putting a lot of targets in our management at Sodexo, and we see that every year we increase again and again our number, and that's very important to measure also this kind of progress. Now hear from our panelist organization what they are taking as deliberate actions to set the right direction for more sustainable, equitable and inclusive future for all. You have done some really excellent work at Unilever to build Future Workplace for all while embedding gender equity. And Vanessa, can you share some promising practices that you have successfully implemented and any outcome that you can see so far?
Thanks so much, Anik. Yeah, first of all, I'd like to take just a few seconds to explain two different concepts, because at Unilever, we're talking about equality and equity differently. They're both important. But while equality looks to treat people in the same way by providing them the same opportunities and resources, We know that this one-size-fits-all approach is only effective if everyone has the exactly same needs. It's assuming that we have a level playing field when every individual has equal advantages or the same barriers. But that in the real world, this is rarely the case. And equity, on the other hand, recognizes that we do not always start from the same place and that we face different barriers and we have different needs. So at Unilever, we're starting to look into the difference of the two and the journey that what we need to do to move from just equality, giving everybody the same opportunity, to equity, that is acknowledging the different needs and the different barriers that each one of us may be facing. We normally say that equality is giving everyone a pair of shoes, and the equity is giving everyone a pair of shoes that fits. One of the examples that we have at Unilever that is working well in this area is these new working models. We want to create new types of flexible working ways that are mutually beneficial for the company and for the employees. We offer better opportunities for those people that don't fit or that not well served for that traditional 40 hours, 9 to 5 of work patterns. And as the principle of equity, this isn't a one size fits all. It's not that what works for someone may not work for another person. We have already briefly spoken about flexible working, so working patterns, hours, locations, so on and so forth. Another example that we have at Unilever is what we call UWork. It's a new working model completely. Employees, they get paid a monthly retainer, they are parts of the additional benefits, and they are still considered a Unilever employee, but they're just contractual to a few hours per year. And on top of that, they work on projects, they work on project basis. So they get paid proportionately to the projects they work on, and they can adjust the amount of days and times that they are dedicating to that. That gives a huge opportunity for those people that are looking for different ways. They still want to be part of a company, they still want to have that kind of job security, but they don't want to be bound to having to work Monday to Friday. They don't want to be bound to have to work to a certain hours. So some people, they may work 3 weeks, for example, and they take 5 weeks off, because they're working on something else, or because they're studying, or because they have some family commitments, or they may work, for example, 2 days a week, or they can work like 3 hours a day. So there are many, many different ways. It's all flexible, depends on the project that they're working on. Of course, that these models, they're not applicable for every role and opportunities, but we're talking about the future of work here. And the companies, they need to focus on creating these new models that works for everyone. This we see as a stepping stone between what we call the gig economy, that people are more working for themselves, while they are still in between this gig economy and the traditional working models, that they are an employee for a company and they work like the traditional hours. This new employment model make the workforce more liquid and still satisfy the need for people to work, learn, and live differently. Another example that we have, that we are creating equity, especially for women, is how we are using our ERGs, our employees resource groups or networks, as many places call it. They're affinity groups. In this case, we use the women's networks groups. They're employees, volunteer-based, and they are working with our HR teams to review and refine the policies that we have available. So these groups of women are actively participating in designing the new policies that will support them in different life stages. So for example, we're designing the menopause support, we are designing the policies to support fertility treatment, and so on and so forth. We are bringing these groups closer, so they are feeding it as we go, and deciding what are the next ones that we need to be working on. By opening this space to have honest conversations about what truly matters to them, what is needed to make a difference, and having this conversation also as a company, what it takes to make it feasible, we are creating a more equitable workplace. The women are being part of the decision-making of creating this workplace for all, and this is how we are driving equity for some specific groups. So thanks for your question.
Thank you, Vanessa. Those are very great examples. So it means the stakes are higher in the work for talent for those companies who want to achieve gender equality, as you stated. And today, women are demanding more from work, and we understand that women need to be part of the decision making while creating a new workplaces. At Sanofi, Raj, I'm curious, you are highly dedicated to the work on gender balance also. And can you share some winning strategies that you have found efficient in your company?
Yeah, look, one of the things that we do at Sanofi is that we build our people policies through co-creation. I think, as Vanessa mentioned, we bring people into that conversation, and we focus on the practicalities and the impact those policies can make. So every policy we launch, we measure, and they must be able to make a difference. So I mentioned earlier to one of the questions around parental leave. We launched it in January, and as of December, we've had over 3,000 people take advantage of that policy, of which 43% were men. So what do we do with that data? Okay, well, why isn't it more men who are taking the policy when it's there? Is it making a difference? And when you've got 14 weeks, are people taking the full 14 weeks? If not, why not? Because our goal is to make sure that what we're putting in place does make a difference to people's lives. So that's really important for us. And one of the big policies that we worked on this year was our new workplace strategy 2.0. And, with hybrid and flexible working, that was a real catalyst for us at Sanofi to co-create with, our FM, our real estate, HSE, communications, ERGs, our diversity teams, our experience teams, and have the voice of the customer. So we built something that we co-wrote, and we got, external insights along the way, because we're not here to mark our own homework, right? So we're always open to challenge, and we have to stay relevant, right? So we're always bold with our principles at Sanofi, because we want to set a minimum standard for everyone to experience. And our goal was to really drive an inclusive and, I guess, consistent experience wherever you are in the Sanofi world. So one of the things that we've really focused on was that we worked with specialist architects and built a core part of this workplace strategy principles around accessibility and inclusion. So there's almost like 80 pages worth of insight that, I would not have even known half of this. And what it showed us was how important intersectionality is when it comes to having a place of work that works for all. So, we're learning as we go, but we're bringing people with us, and this is to ensure that level of sustainability. The other big piece that we did last year was our new wellbeing strategy, and we built it around healthy minds, healthy bodies, healthy finance, and healthy culture. And the first thing we focused on, coming out of a pandemic, was on rest and recovery. We know how hard people have worked working from home, especially when it's the biggest experiment in history. Nobody knew what the rules of the game were. So as part of our launch, we targeted things like psychological safety, building a speak up culture. We've already started this year to work on mental health, menopause, working with cancer, having caring responsibilities, as well as recognition, because what we know is that this forms part of the everyday wellness for our teams, and we know that disproportionately impacts women. So we're looking at this from a 360 perspective. And the final thing I would say is that nothing in Sanofi happens without someone being accountable for it. So we have very clear gender goals in place for our top 500 execs in their annual objectives, and the tone from the top has to be a very loud one. We share our progress, with our teams through quarterly dashboards. We're totally transparent. Red, amber, or green, it's all out there, because what that does, it maintains trust in the work that we're doing. We're very intentional. It's all about making the impact and holding each other to account, and that's the behavior set that we practice to get a fairer outcome. And today, for our senior leadership, we're already more than 40%, but that's not good enough for Sanofi, right? We're taking moonshots at gender parity, 50-50 at the senior level, of the organization. So they're just 3 or 4 things that we're doing specifically and measuring the progress of them.
Thank you, Raj, and that's a very good point. And given the reality of increasing competition for the best talent, finding and retaining high quality skilled candidates or employees, that remains the true challenge. Candidates feel today empowered to pick and choose employers and jobs that make sense to them, that fit their lifestyle, moral values. Exactly today, Sodexo is launching a renewed employee value proposition that states strongly that working with us is more than a job. It's a chance to be part of something greater. This framework focuses on those everyday, as you say, ongoing small actions that count, delivering on outstanding employee experience and an impact our employees have every day in the workplace and also beyond in communities. But Peter, can maybe unpack that further and share example how this plays around concretely.
I'll try to do that, Annick, definitely. and first of all, I would like to say that I'm extremely proud over being part of a company that have this strong employee value proposition. I would say that it builds on actually tangible changes and tangible progression, I would say. And by achieving tangible progression, you need to measure things, and by packing this and make this understandable in a good way. So maybe I will give you a couple of examples what we're doing and what we are talking about and what we are measuring. And need to say that Sunil was in the initial speak talking about the gender diversity that we actually are following as a company. And I would say that it's extremely good that we have an objective that says that 100% of our employees work in countries that have a gender balance in their management. That we will need to achieve by 2025. And you heard from Sunil that we are currently today 39% of the management is actually female in our company. So this is something that we are measuring. We have measured for many years before this, and we are progressing every year. And this is also something that is extremely key for us as a company. Also to promote the local development. We also have another objective, which is actually that 10 billion euros of our business value will actually benefit SMEs, small, medium-sized enterprises. And this is also something that we're extremely proud over. It makes sure that we are actually contributing to the local society in a good way. We have some real-life examples, and just one example that I bring out there is actually that in a municipality in Sweden, we have a supply agreement with a local female farmer that provides meat to the schools in the municipality. And that is just one example of what we're doing to make sure that the local society is benefiting also from Sodexo. I think those things are really, really key to be able to attract people to our company. We also have a couple of programs. I also know that we have talked a bit earlier about She Works. She Works is a program which contains job shadowing, and it also gives the women employees possible to look for other possibilities in their work life and get acquainted to other roles and find opportunities. More what we do is also another thing in this that we measure is also that within Sodexo we also have 1 day per employee that we can use for charity work. And this is something fantastic, I would say. So just imagine that we have 422,000 employees, and imagine the amount of help that we can bring to the people in need. we do follow this as well, and 2022 there were 14,000 out of it 422,000 that used it actually, and so we have something to do there to become even better. But I think that these are examples of the unique value proposition that we have and that we can bring as a company as well. And I hope by having it this way, I have unpacked it a bit anyway. So I've given some examples on what we're doing. And this is also something that needs to come out there. So this will be a clear magnet for the workforce for the future. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, to be such a good advocate of everything we are deploying and doing at Sodexo, and there's much more. But let's then go back to our audience for the next question, and maybe pick 2 or 3. So we have one, it's a good one. It's about hybrid working. Hybrid working is proven to be popular with women and of course with men. But what does the panel believe to be the right balance between flexibility to be at home and regular visibility of female talent in the workplace? Because we know that visibility of women is very important. Maybe Sandra, you could jump into this question first, and then we pass on to Sandra, Peter, and Vanessa, Peter, and Raj.
Annick, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one because as I think it was mentioned before in the panel, flexibility is a very important lever, and not only for women, but also for what was also mentioned for men, and for more, I mean, for more sharing of the workload at home. So it is an absolutely critical lever, and I would argue that this COVID period has allowed us to make a step change we would not have gone through otherwise. At the same time, and it is in what you heard from your participants. At the same time, we have seen before COVID that when flexibility is taken by women more than by men, and it's easy to follow. In our benchmark, we look at the percentage of flexible hours by women versus men. When there is no equilibrium, so when women use flexibility measures more than men, it does have an impact on the advancement of these women. So I guess that based on these facts, we should absolutely support flexibility, but make sure this is a gender inclusive measure that applies to all genders and not only to women.
And Raj and Vanessa at Unilever and Sanofi, we were talking about microaggression, and among the microaggression that Sandra showed us, there was this visibility side included in the slide that you showed us. Are you particularly attentive when you have this hybrid mode of working in your companies on the visibility of women?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that we've done is we've put in a mandatory training program about being an inclusive manager. Right, so as a manager, what responsibility must you take to ensure that every member of your team feels connected? You can see the progress, the impact they're making. So when it comes to discussions around performance and opportunity, you're doing it in the fairest way possible. We have a hybrid model, which is 2 to 3 days on average a week in the office, and we're all about outcome and the so what. So I think, when you turn this on its head, the responsibility really is on us as leaders to make sure that we're taking everything we see into account, and that could be whether they're in front of you or whether they're working from elsewhere. So the intervention for us is on the leadership side as opposed to the individual side, because that's what we believe we have a responsibility to do as an organization.
And Vanessa, what about Unilever?
Yeah, well, Raj said really nice. The main thing for us, it's actually interventions on talent management. How actually we do when we are talking about providing feedback, end of year assessments or assessment on projects, how we make sure that those moments are fair and inclusive, and actually the opinions are being provided are based on facts, are based on deliverables, and not exactly the amount of time that somebody spent close to that person or not. So there are few interventions that we can do to trying to minimize that imbalance, the lack of balance between face time. So for example, when we're talking about hybrid, some of our offices, we have the days that are some groups are supposed to be in the office, so it's not like random, so certain groups expect to be in the office on a Monday, for example. That's the time when the leaders are there, so then everybody should be prioritizing that. So it's a kind of a way that we're experimenting and trying to find the best way of solving that. So that day, everybody should have face time and have visibility and so on in the office there, if that's the case. But then the most important things when it comes like to the moments, the crucial moments, that is assessment, performance management, talent management, that we ensure that our interventions and our procedures and practices in place are inclusive, and that we can take everything that we can to try to get the bias out of the room, because that's another kind of bias, about visibility and face time.
Thank you, Vanessa, for this testimony. Maybe we can pick up one more question and then go back into our panel. But there's one which is of actuality, in France today. There is much focus on the younger employees, but what are you doing for the aging employees as people continue to work longer or to an older age? This is a good question. It is about also intersectionality when we are dealing with gender diversity, because it's not opposing, younger generation and of course older generation. What do you want to answer this question, and who wants to pick the question?
I'm happy to give it a go. Look, one of the things that we set up in Sanofi was an employee resource group for generations, and we had an ExCom sponsor who looks at that. So what we're doing is we're looking at the life cycle of people when they come and join and then eventually leave Sanofi. And one of the big things we're doing is to focus on the different types of roles that we can have, or if people are looking to retire, what can we do to soften the exit so they still feel part of Sanofi as they start to sunset their careers, or even come back later on a part-time basis or to mentor. So we're exploring lots of different things. I don't think there is one answer to this. We're all going to get there. It's very clear. I guess some like me quicker than others, but the aim is to give people the opportunity to look at different ways of doing things in an organization. We always focus on early talent. We do that an awful lot, and most companies are the same. But we've got a lot of talent that we reskill, retrain. We're in the digital world, and there's opportunity to do some of that as well. So we're looking at it through several different ways, and also just asking people what they want. I said earlier, we don't create anything without involving the people it could potentially impact. So we ask the questions.
That's a good answer. Asking questions of what we want to do to support all generation and all aspects of the life of our employees in our company. On that subject, it's interesting that Sodexo, with Sophie Belon, she just worked on this subject a few months ago, and she issued a report for the French government. We are monitoring at Sodexo also these questions, because it's very important to be sure that all the experience at any age in the company are really, nurtured, and that everybody can thrive in the company, whatever young or, middle age or older are people in the company. So let's come back with you, Fami, because we're talking about also the young generation. So based on what you heard and on the study, what additional actions would you recommend organization still put in place to respond to the ambitions of future talents when you hear these debates of today?
And thank you for that question. So from the survey we did, we learned that students are willing to undertake responsibilities, training, and leadership roles at an early stage of their career. And this is mainly because they do not have anything tied to them personally, or they don't have any personal commitments such as raising families. So they are therefore keen to transfer their free time into opportunities to take responsibilities at work and to expand their skills and knowledge. So in conclusion, I would therefore say that employers to accept or to try and train young talents who are willing to explore the workplace and challenge them, and also to welcome changes, to welcome new young talent into the company, to welcome them and to train them and to give them the opportunity to endorse in leadership role and undertake responsibilities. So it will be an opportunity for them to provide companies to provide mentorship, leadership role, training programs for future generation to get involved.
Thank you, Femi. And Peter, as a gender diversity advocate, what advice would you give to the current leader on our call today?
Well, I would, not putting myself on high horses, so to say, but I think that there are still a couple of things to be said. Also, first of all, to understand that the day is not as it was pre-pandemic. The work life has changed, and in the flexible, individualized hybrid work life that we have today, leadership is even more important compared to how it was pre-pandemic. Our leaders, all leaders, have to understand the new environment. That is a key first thing, and understand also the flexible work life and all the demands that it puts on you, like remote leadership, etc. This together with also making sure that you are developing your coaching leadership skills. There is a saying that if you take care of your people, the people will take care of your business, and that is true. So definitely focus on your people. And lastly, embrace differences, all kinds of differences. Do not recruit copies of yourself. And I think that Sandra's presentation earlier really gave us evidence that you will have a much higher performing team if you have a diverse team compared to undiversified team. Thank you.
Thank you. And so what about Raj? What advice would you give to the next generation of male leaders?
I've got to say, start by being curious, step into the shoes of your mother, your sister, your daughter, your aunt, your niece, your grandmother, learn to, I guess, understand and empathize from their experiences and challenges that I guess we as men have probably missed every single day, even though they're right in front of us. Sponsor women for key opportunities, encourage them to apply for bigger roles, offer to be a mentor, be visible with them. Call out when you're seeing an injustice in decision making when it comes to talent, and most of the time, the change has to start with men, and sometimes it needs to start at home. Equal housework, equal responsibility, equal say, and therefore equal chance. And finally recognize one thing, and that's that allyship is easily said but not easily done. You have to work at it.
That's so true. And Vanessa, what advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders on the other side?
Oh, thanks, Anik. Well, actually, I think we all, at least in the UK here, woke up this morning with some news about one of the resignation of one of the most renowned and female leaders in the world, like Jacinda Ardern as the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Personally, is a woman that I strongly admire. So actually, I would like to use her words instead of mine, because I love the quote that she used on her speech, that she wants the world to think that you can be kind but strong, empathetic but decisive, optimistic but focused, and that you can be your own kind of leader. So if I could give any advice, I would give that kind of advice, for the future female leaders, because I do believe that's what the world needs now, a bit more empathy, a bit more optimism, a little bit more kindness, and not only for female leaders, for all leaders of the future. We should all be looking to be a little bit more kind, empathetic, and optimistic.
Thank you, Vanessa. And there's a very interesting questions coming from the floor, and that would be the last questions. What advice can you offer for individuals in terms of next steps when they don't feel empowered to challenge their managers, when the same flexibility isn't granted to them as the opposite sex? That's a tough question. Who wants to jump in it?
I'm happy to give it a go.
Great, Raj, thanks.
Look, I think, there used to be this thing that we used to say that there's a war for talent. And somebody said to me, well, the war for talent is over, talent won. Now, if you do not get what you need in your organization, move, right? I know it may be contentious, but are you in the right culture? Are you in a space where that organization is going to get the best out of you? We've heard about the level of turnover from women, and maybe this is part of that problem, right? So we have to look at our own culture and ask ourselves, would we be happy for our mothers, our daughters, our sisters, our nieces to be working there? Would they get the fair opportunity that everybody else would get, like my son, my dad, my brother, my nephew, right? So I'm of the view that we're empowered. We're an empowered generation that's coming up, and they can make choices. And I know my daughter would make that choice, and equally my son. So I think it's down to us to work and find the culture that we deserve.
Very true. Vanessa, you want to add something?
To complement, I think that but I agree, Raj. We are in this war of talent, and the people can make their own decisions. But I always say also, like, we have to fight the status quo. Fight those things, but with compassion as well. In a way. So I don't know exactly this instance. Nobody know that many times it is challenging to discuss with your line managers or superiors. But there are different ways. That you can go around. I don't know exactly why you wouldn't feel empowered. If there is, for example, if flexibility is available, it's having those kinds of discussions as well to say, hey, this is what I need, that the company is talking about, this is what's available. If you are in a company that offers that, find also like who can help you with that, in your own company. If you're in a company that doesn't offer that, doesn't offer that psychological safety, doesn't offer you the support that you need to be able to have those conversations, completely agree with Raj. Probably you're not in the right place and not fitting the right culture there. So look carefully with it, into it. But if not, if you the company itself, because also we know that companies, even though the company has a culture, there is a mindset, there is the leadership trying to set the tone. We're made of thousands of individuals, and we're going to have like different individuals in there as well. So trying to find within your company who can help you navigate that, how you can challenge. If it's a specific leader, you can either move within the company to another leader, or you can find different ways of trying to go around it. If it's really like not the company culture, then yes, find another place that fits better. Probably is the best answer.
Thank you. So yes, speak up if you are in this kind of environments. That's very important, and ask questions also, and related to your personal environment and also the personal environment of your manager, to just raise the point and don't be shy. That's, I think, the right attitude. So thank you for this rich and inspiring exchange, and our audience for your interaction with us. It has been a pleasure to share this virtual stage with you today. And now I'm going to pass the floor to Kunera, because it is the end of our session today. Kunera.
Thank you, Aniek. Indeed, very inspiring and exciting. And as always, time has gone fast, and we're already at the end of today's webinar. Please join me in thanking Aniek and the panel, Vanessa, Fumni, Raj, Peter, Sunil for setting the context, Sandra for delivering all the data from McKinsey, and Julie for opening today's webinar. It has been a very interesting discussion on the future workplace and how companies can adapt to meet the changing needs of women as leaders today, as well as future talent. We know gender balance drives business performance. So when investing in women, we are investing in teams, in organizations, in families and communities, and we need to continue to progress on this. Effective and tangible change that will shape our companies and environments to be sustainable, inclusive, and purpose-driven requires true co-creation, and very important, a co-creation with all stakeholders around the same table. Gender equality needs to be at the heart of the impact we want to make and in the future environments. And this must extend past gender. It also requires a focus on intersectionality, as we heard today, age, ethnicity, disability, sexual orientation, and gender identity. In recognizing all aspects of an employee's identity, we will be able to build a truly inclusive workplace where everybody feels they belong, can act with purpose, and thrive in their own way. And we all have a role to play. This cannot just be a one-time event. It must be a continued dialogue, us all acting together, because we have a way to go. So thank you for joining us today. I hope we inspired you and that you will continue to make an impact. And we look forward to further exchanges. Thank you. Wish you all a great day.